I'm Kathleen, and my hero is Leighton Jackson. For those of you that don't know Leighton, he and his wife Mary attend the 8:30 service here at our church. For several years now, I have served alongside of Leighton on many and numerous mission projects that we've done. We've painted houses together, we've scraped paint together, he's grown a garden for us here at the church. Several different ways that Leighton has given of his time. He picks up trash with the trash crew that cleans up right out here on Highway 71 as well. For several years, Leighton has served in the Fort Smith Public Schools, and he has given thousands of hours just to help kids in need, especially in teaching them how to read. A hero to me is someone who is totally selfless and gives of themselves first, and there is no better example of that than Leighton Jackson.
Done a little bit of public speaking in my life, but not usually to groups this size, and certainly not on the topic of heroes. But thought I'd start out this morning with a dictionary definition of what a hero is. I looked on dictionary.com, and it says that a hero is a man of distinguished courage or ability, admired for his brave deeds and noble qualities. You know, when you look through the Bible, there are a lot of those heroes that may have been average guys until God gave them the call to be a hero. And that in itself says something about our relationship with God. That people in ordinary circumstances can become extraordinary when God is with them. We a couple of weeks ago, or I guess it's been a month ago now, got a call from Jeff, and he said, you know, would you mind preaching on Father's Day? Preston's getting ready to take the youth to camp. Susan and I are going to be celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary with a cruise, and he said, you're my third choice. Hey, you know what? Third ain't bad. Last year, Jeff started a preaching workshop, and there were, I guess, 6 or 7 of us in that, and everybody else last year got to do their sermon, and I was starting to feel a little put out personally, you know, you get a little, but then, you know, I've talked to a couple of people that said, well, maybe he just wanted church to get out on time, because I kind of have a habit of going on, so I've been real conscious about, let's keep it within the time frame here, and we'll talk about it. What I wanted to visit with you about today is a hero that's in the Bible that everybody knows about some of his exploits, but sometimes we don't think about when it all started. And that person is Joshua. Now, anybody who's been through Sunday school knows that Joshua is the guy that after Moses passes on, he leads the Israelites into the promised land and crosses the Jordan River with them and conquers the whole territory, makes the walls fall down in Jericho. But I think that Joshua's real call to heroism started way before that. I think he started way back when he was one of the 12 men that was chosen to go into the promised land to explore it. And I'll tell you why. He started out as a leader of his clan, chosen by God, chosen by Moses to go in and explore the promised land, which was a pretty dangerous place. There was a lot of people there that were bigger than me. I'm a pretty big guy. And these guys went in there, 12 men. Their purpose was to find out if it was worth moving in. Now, God had already said, look, this is where you're going to go. But these 12 guys were going to figure out how to get there. Now, they went in, the timing of their trip was the time of the first grape harvest, because God wanted them to see what a bounteous place this could be. He had promised them a land flowing with milk and honey. Not something that they were going to have to work hard to see, what that bounty would be. He had promised them success. He had promised them greatness. And when those 12 guys came back with a bunch of grapes that took 2 men to carry, they put it on a pole, 2 men carrying grapes. Now, I've carried a bunch of grapes before. The grapes today are not the grapes that 2 men need to carry on a pole. Okay? This was a land of promise. But then they also found that there were some people there that were pretty terrifying. They found a group of people that would kill them. Now that scared the daylights out of 10 of those 12 people. 10 of those 12 men came back and they said, look, it's a beautiful place. It's got fruit like this. It's got everything we could ever ask for. But you know what? Those people are pretty scary. We think we ought to wait. Maybe they'll just die off before we get there. But Joshua and Caleb, who had been friends for a long time, came back with a minority report that said, you know what? I think we ought to go. God says he promises us success. He promises us that this is our land. This is ours for the taking if we believe. Now, those 10 guys were pretty powerful in their own clan. They spread word pretty quickly that, you know what, we don't need to go there. And so the group of the Israelites said, pretty scary, I'm not going to go. And then they went to the extent that they wanted to stone those guys, kill them, for encouraging them to go in and invade that land. Now, sometimes things are a little scary in life. You know, we've all dealt with some obstacles. And I think that's one of the things that makes Joshua's story really unique in the Bible. There's been other guys in the Bible that had problems to overcome. I mean, Noah building a boat in the middle of the desert. Yeah, people probably thought he was a little loony. Or how about David? Little guy, slingshot, big guy. Kind of the synopsis version of it. But you know, David had God on his side. Noah had God on his side. How about Paul going on the road to Damascus? Big flashlight, blinding. He'd spent his entire early adulthood persecuting Christians, killing them, watching them die. And then he was chosen by God to go, you know what? I think you could be a good tool for me. So that, you know, there was a credibility gap there for Paul too. But I think, you know, Joshua had a situation where he had already been with Moses coming out of Egypt. He'd already been to the point where he was one of those chosen to go into the promised land. And it's amazing to me that Joshua could take that message, bring it back, risk his life, and then deal with the disappointment that he'd done all that work and didn't get to fulfill the promise. You know, that life can be difficult. There's a lot of times where we face obstacles, and a lot of how we deal with those obstacles is how people see us. And I think that's what makes Joshua a hero here. You know, the crowd had gone with the majority, and Joshua put his life out there and had to go back home after spending 40 days on the road, had to go back home to the tent. And I can only imagine what that conversation was like with his wife. I've had a similar kind of conversation with my wife several times over the course of my adult life, when it's like, we're going to move where? I mean, can you imagine Joshua going back and say, honey, you know, we went in to look at this place, and it's really great. There's some scary people there, but it's really great. And his wife going, well, then why aren't we going? Yeah, you know, they threatened to kill me. Oh. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to wander in the desert for 40 years. Yeah, you know, that conversation couldn't have gone well. So I'm thinking, that 40 years had to be pretty difficult. 40 years in the desert. Now, Teresa and I have been married 36 years. We've lived in some places where you might call it the wilderness. But you know what? We always had heat and air conditioning in our houses. And a lot of times, despite the discomfort of certain situations, we kind of made it through. But 40 years in the desert, hanging out with camels, hanging out with oxen, had to be a little difficult for Joshua. So dealing with that disappointment was probably one of those things that was really difficult for him. But Joshua never quit. He stayed there. He could have taken his toys and gone home. He could have said, you know what, you guys go ahead and stay here. Me and my family, we're moving on. But he didn't. Because God had told him he was going to be the guy that led them to the promised land. And Joshua thought more of fulfilling that promise than for his own personal gratitude or own personal promotion within that meantime. I can tell you that recently some things have happened in my work life that made me kind of think about Joshua a little bit. I found out about a year ago that my boss was going to be retiring this year, and with his permission, I talked to his boss about the possibility of my, moving up to that position. And in that conversation, he said, "Yeah, you're a candidate. We want to, we'd like to talk to you about it before the decision's made, so on and so forth." So I spent some time, some significant time, not 40 days. No, I didn't spend 40 days, but I spent quite a bit of time putting together a plan for that conversation, hoping that I'd have it. And kept waiting for the call. Never got it. And then the Friday, a couple days before Mother's Day, we had a department head meeting at the newspaper, and it was announced that another guy had been chosen for that job. And sitting in that department head meeting, I was in shock. Disappointment was probably about the nicest word I could say. But I was okay, Called my wife, talked to my son who works with me, and I said, it's going to be difficult. I don't know that I can do this. And bless my wife's heart. She said, well, you know what? You're going to have to try. And so I went back to the Chamber Expo that day. The Business Expo was that day, and my phone was just blowing up with texts and emails because it had been announced on the internet, and a lot of people in town knew I had an interest in it. And I thought, wow, there's a lot of people that really care. And I actually got enough of those that I thought, man, I'm really tired of answering that question. Am I okay? But there were people that cared about the disappointment, and I think there had to be some of those in the Israelite community too. Because Joshua stuck around, and I got to think that he was getting some support. But I think the biggest thing is that I went to God in prayer that day, and I said, you know what? Maybe it's just not the right time. And so when I got that call from Jeff on that Monday, and he said, we want to dust off your Joshua sermon for this, I thought, man, it's going to be a lot different sermon than I worked on last year. And a little different focus. But anyway, what it really drew me to is the story of the waiting and bringing it all around to completion. and fulfilling the promise after that. We all deal with some obstacles in our lives, and one of the scriptures that really came to mind when I was preparing for this was Deuteronomy 31, verse 23. And I think, it's up there. It says, "The Lord gave this command to Joshua, son of Nun. Be strong and courageous, for you will bring the Israelites into the land I promised them on oath, and I myself will be with you." The Lord didn't say, "Hey, I'm suggesting." He said, "You will bring the Israelites." Didn't say when, just said you would. And I got to thinking about that be strong and courageous thing, and I'm thinking, if life was easy, we wouldn't have to be strong and courageous. We could just cruise on through. Just live life. No problem. But the Lord said, be strong and courageous, because you're going to be my guy. And I promise that I myself will be with you. Now, puts a little extra burden on his shoulders. Now, life can be a lot easier than that. We can go with the majority, hang back. Don't have to worry about, leading. Don't have to worry about being out there. But dads, isn't there some times where we have to do that, where we have to lead, where we have to be the strong and courageous one? Because there's obstacles out there. There's stuff that we got to go, and we got to show people we're willing to do. So when Moses passes on, it's left up to Joshua. And the blessing that he receives from the Lord says it again. Joshua chapter 1, verses 5 through 7 and verse 9 says, "No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you or forsake you." He's not standing on his own here. He is with God. "Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I promised their ancestors. Be strong and courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." As I said before, if life was easy, we wouldn't need strength and courage. We run into obstacles all the time. We're promised difficulty, but we're promised success. Sometimes it takes patience. Sometimes it just takes being a leader. My day ended that Friday with a meeting with my staff at the paper, and I wanted them to see that I was okay. I woke up that morning. I told them, I said, I woke up this morning with the second best job in the company. I still got the second best job in the company. I'm okay. Well, work is this much of my life. This is my life. And that Sunday after church, my son and I were out playing golf. My daughter and my wife were out doing Mother's Day things. And so we went out and played golf. And while we were out on the golf course, Adam said to me, he said, "Dad, you had every right to kick and scream and take your toys and go home and go someplace else. Quit." He said, "I don't know that I've ever been more proud of you than when you chose to lead." Meant an awful lot to me. Because what we do in the face of an obstacle, what we do in the face of disappointment is what people remember us for. They remember how we dealt with problems, how we dealt with danger, how we dealt with disappointment. How do you deal with it? You know, what I've found in recent years is prayer works. Haven't run into a situation yet where God has not left me or hasn't been with me, where he's given up on me and left me standing there by myself. He doesn't guarantee easy. Anybody can do easy. What he guarantees is success if we don't stray from the path, and if we accept his call, and if we do what we ask and are ready to be there when he's ready for us. You know, Jeff preached on Memorial Day weekend about asking God to bless our plans instead of following his plan. And I think, you know, maybe it wasn't my time. Maybe it's not that. Maybe this isn't what. And since then, there's been some instances where I thought, you know what? God really watched over me by not putting me in that position. And so I think that there's some things that I've learned that I hope everybody gets to experience, is that the love of God and the passion of God is for us to be successful. And he's going to do everything he can to make that happen on his time and with his blessing. Amen.